And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska aviation weather outlook on Saturday, July 19th, 2025. And to set things up as of this Saturday morning, and we're going into Sunday, there is generally in the mid-upper levels of the atmosphere a circulating low pressure circulation covering a good portion of the Bering. This feature is going to drift northeastward, be located over the Bering Strait as we head into later Sunday, early Monday. And the ridging that we currently have here in the Gulf that nudges upward into the southeast interior and pushes toward the western panhandle, that'll move eastward a little bit and then flatten out this coming week as what's going to happen is we're going to continue to have energy and weather systems coming in off the Bering heading east and then southeastward. Some of that energy will translate toward the Gulf, but one thing that is certain, it's going to bring an occasionally wet pattern to areas of the interior as we go through the upcoming week. Already there have been areas of rain and rain showers at times, but we'll have more rounds coming in along the west coast and then spreading inland. So Sunday morning we expect IFR conditions along the Beaufort Sea coast with low cloudiness and some fog, and then down here along the Bering from St. Lawrence, St. Matthew, all the way down through the Aleutian chain, especially the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. And then getting into Sunday afternoon, enough instability. There could be a few thunderstorms pop up along the mid-upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile gold country. Otherwise, MVFR conditions are expected along much of the west coast that may come inland a bit to the west side arm of the Alaska Range. And then out here in the Bering, IFR conditions southwest of St. Lawrence covering St. Matthew, well north of the central Aleutians. And then for Monday morning, we find more in the way of widespread IFR conditions creeping upwards through the Gulf and then extending down along the lower Alaska Peninsula, all the way out along the Aleutian chain, much of the Bering Sea, St. Matthew, St. Paul, up to St. Lawrence Island. Perhaps a pocket of IFR conditions here along the south slopes of the central Brooks Range, as well as here, Cape Newingham around east side of Kuskokwim Bay, kind of the western portion of Bristol Bay, and then up along the Arctic coast, some more low stratus and fog potentially there Monday morning. And for Monday afternoon, we find IFR conditions continuing along the entire Arctic coast, coming through the Bering Strait along coastal areas of the west, extending outward to the Pribilovs and then down in through especially central western Aleutians, with some MVFR conditions coming inland to the western interior and then up along the outer Panhandle coast. Past conditions for Sunday: Anatuvik Pass, east central Brooks Range, VFR becoming MVFR. Adigan Pass may hold on to VFR conditions generally speaking. West arm of the Alaska Range, MVFR in the morning, giving way to VFR conditions, though some MVFR conditions could linger on as you get past the west entrances of those passes. Rainy Pass, MVFR on Sunday morning, becoming VFR. And then as we round up there, Windy Pass, same thing, MVFR in the morning, becoming VFR. And Isabel Pass, look for generally VFR conditions continuing as you go eastward. Mentasta Pass, but in the afternoon, early evening, there could be an isolated thunderstorm as you get past the north entrance up there through the upper parts of the Tanana Valley toward the 40-mile gold country. Tanita Pass will start out with MVFR conditions early Sunday morning, giving to VFR, and then Portage Pass, generally VFR conditions should prevail there. As is the case for the northern panhandle, VFR conditions are expected on Sunday. And looking at the freezing levels, the surface freezing line is down there across the Chukchi Sea, coming in around Wainwright to along the Beaufort Sea coast. But note, freezing levels aloft are quite high. We have the ridging here into the Gulf, North Pacific, so freezing levels aloft are at or above 14,000 feet, lower Gulf into the North Pacific. Back to the west, because of the low pressure, broader circulation here over the Bering, we find freezing levels aloft below 6,000 feet, and that feature is going to drift northeastward toward the Bering Strait as we get into Monday. Meanwhile, we'll find this ridge beginning to flatten as it works its way eastward. And with the push of moisture coming in off the Bering Sea associated with these low pressures and fronts, we do find the potential for some isolated to considerable moderate icing along areas of the central Brooks Range above 12,000 feet, above 14,000 feet along and just west of the Alaska Range, and then back out here toward the northern Bering Sea, including St. Lawrence Island, near that center, that cooler pocket of air aloft, above 10,000 feet there during the day Sunday. And there's going to be some showers scoot up Shelikof Strait here, the northern Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, heading northeastward. So there could be some isolated moderate icing down there in that area, the southwest around Lake Iliamna. And we have, you can clearly see the ridging pattern here for Sunday over the Gulf. Strong jet core of 130 knots coming southwesterly flow aloft there at 30,000 feet, right around Cape Newingham, Bristol Bay, western part of Bristol Bay and Kuskokwim Bay. If we bring it down to 9,000 feet, 700 millibars, we have a broad wind field, southwesterly flow aloft, 40 to locally 50, 55 knots, south side of the Alaska Peninsula and north there, just east of the Pribilofs. And then for 3,000 feet, we find winds out over the Bering that extend off of, say, Nunavik Island, 35, 40 knot westerly west-southwest flow. If we go east of the Alaska Peninsula at 3,000 feet for Sunday, we find winds 35 to as high as 45 knots off of Kodiak Island, and especially there to the south-southwest of Kodiak Island, and that will translate to the threat of some moderate turbulence along areas around Kodiak Island, extending southwestward just off of the Alaska Peninsula, surface to 4,000 feet, and then an area of moderate turbulence back out toward the central Aleutians, surface to 3,000 feet, and there could be some isolated moderate turbulence creeping up from the eastern Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula, as well as areas of the southwest coast, such as Cape Newingham on over toward Nunavik Island, St. Matthew, and down there toward the Pribilofs at St. Paul.